July 25, 1944. If General George Smith Patton hadn't broken through at Avranches in the next 10 days, 50,000 United States soldiers would have been trapped in Normandy. Not delayed, not pushed back, trapped. The man they called Old Blood and Guts was about to turn his greatest humiliation into the most explosive breakthrough of World War II. 10 months earlier, he'd been a disgraced general. Now, the fate of the entire invasion rested on his shoulders. This is what happened next. August 3rd, 1943. General George Smith Patton stood in a hospital tent in Sicily. He'd just slapped a soldier suffering from battle fatigue. 7 days later, he did it again. The press exploded. Senators demanded his court-martial. The hero who conquered North Africa became the most hated man in the United States Army overnight. General Dwight David Eisenhower had no choice. He stripped Patton of his command and buried him in disgrace. For 11 months, George Smith Patton sat in England, humiliated, sidelined, forced to lead a phantom army that didn't exist. While other generals planned D-Day, Old Blood and Guts watched from the shadows. They called him Old Blood and Guts because he led from the front, charging into battle while other generals commanded from behind desks. But now he was just a disgrace waiting for a second chance he thought would never come. Then came July 1944. The Normandy invasion had stalled. 6 weeks after D-Day, United States forces were still trapped in the hedgerows of France, bleeding men by the thousands. Every attack ground to a halt. The Germans had turned Normandy into a killing field. Eisenhower needed a miracle. He needed someone who could do the impossible. He needed the one general every German commander feared. He needed Old Blood and Guts. July 20th, 1944. A makeshift headquarters in France. General Omar Nelson Bradley presented his plan. Operation Cobra, a concentrated breakout at St. Lo. But success required something no one believed possible. Someone had to punch through 30 miles of German defenses, race to Avranches, and unleash an entire army through a gap that might close in hours. The room fell silent. Then Bradley spoke the name everyone was thinking, George Smith. Patton arrived in France with fire in his eyes. They'd given him the Third Army, but it was a test. One mistake and he'd be finished forever. Old Blood and Guts knew this was his last shot at redemption. The Germans knew it too. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt told his commanders, "Watch for Patton. Where Patton goes, the main attack follows." The enemy respected Old Blood and Guts more than his own command did. July 25th, 1944, 6:38 in the morning. Operation Cobra began. 3,000 bombers unleashed hell on German positions near St. Lo. The ground shook. The sky turned black. When the smoke cleared, a gap appeared in the German line. General J. Lawton Collins' 7th Corps pushed forward. But the breakthrough was fragile. The Germans were reorganizing. The window was closing. This is where George Smith Patton would either prove his genius or confirm his disgrace. July 28th, 1944. Patton's moment arrived, but there was a problem. His Third Army wasn't officially activated yet. By military regulations, he couldn't take command for 3 more days. Old Blood and Guts didn't care about regulations. He grabbed his pearl-handled pistols and drove to the front. He found the 4th Armored Division commander. "Don't wait for orders," Patton growled. "Don't stop for anything. Get to Avranches before the Germans seal that gap. Move like your hair's on fire." The race was on. General John Shirley Wood's 4th Armored Division pushed south. 20 miles, 30 miles. The Germans tried to close the gap. Old Blood and Guts personally directed traffic at critical crossroads, waving tanks forward under artillery fire. This is why they called him Old Blood and Guts. While other generals studied maps 50 miles behind the lines, George Smith Patton stood in the fire, pushing his men forward through sheer force of will. July 30th, 1944, evening. The 4th Armored Division reached Avranches, the gateway to Brittany, the door to France. But holding a town meant nothing. Patton needed to push his entire Third Army through that narrow corridor before the Germans counterattacked. It was impossible. 300,000 men, 40,000 vehicles, All had to squeeze through a single town. Traffic jams meant death. Delay meant disaster. August 1st, 1944, noon. Official activation of the Third Army. George Smith Patton now commanded the largest armored force ever assembled by the United States. But the situation was desperate. The Germans were massing for a massive counterattack. Everyone knew it. If Patton's army got stuck in Avranches, the Germans would cut it to pieces. Military experts gave him 48 hours before catastrophe struck. Old Blood and Guts had a different plan. While other generals would consolidate and defend, George Smith Patton did the impossible. He attacked in every direction at once. His tanks roared west into Brittany. They surged south toward the Loire River. They wheeled east behind German lines. In 72 hours, the Third Army advanced further than any army in modern military history. German commanders couldn't believe the reports. "How many Pattons are there?" They radioed headquarters in panic. The Germans called him Der Blutige Patton, Bloody Patton. Not because he was reckless, but because he was unstoppable. German Field Marshal Günther von Kluge told his staff, "Patton is the most dangerous man the Americans have. He thinks like we do, he attacks like we do, and he's faster than we are." August 4th, 1944. In just 10 days, Old Blood and Guts had shattered the Normandy stalemate. The Third Army captured 10,000 German soldiers. They liberated 100 French towns. They advanced 100 miles. The entire German defensive line in northern France collapsed. What British Field Marshal Bernard Law Montgomery couldn't do in 6 weeks, George Smith Patton did in 10 days. The press that crucified him 11 months ago now called him a genius. Senators who demanded his court-martial now demanded his promotion. The disgraced general who slapped a soldier became the savior of the invasion. But Old Blood and Guts wasn't doing it for glory. He was doing it to prove what he always knew. He was born for war. August 6th, 1944. The Germans launched a desperate counterattack at Mortain, trying to cut off Patton's advance. It was their last chance. Old Blood and Guts saw it coming before it happened. He had already positioned his forces. The German attack shattered against United States defenses. Within days, the entire German 7th Army was trapped in the Falaise pocket. 200,000 enemy soldiers surrounded. All because George Smith Patton turned 10 days into legend. The Avranches breakthrough changed everything. It transformed the war. It transformed Patton. From disgrace to triumph, from humiliation to immortality. This is why the United States military still studies those 10 days. This is why every tank commander knows the name George Smith Patton. This is why they called him Old Blood and Guts. If this story of Old Blood and Guts' redemption moved you, hit subscribe. We're bringing you more untold moments from General George Smith Patton, history's greatest combat commander. Because legends never die, they just wait for their moment to charge back into history.